Good morning. It's Friday, April 3rd, 2020. The April State Board of Education meeting will now come to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States
of America,
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible,
justice.
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Information regarding the Open Meetings Act is linked on the April board agenda in Spark. The electronic meeting software and the Open Meetings Act is also posted on the State Board of Education's website, www.education.ne.gov/stateboard. Live internet broadcast is available through the State Board of Education website at www.education.ne.gov/live-video-stream. Board members, please unmute your audio microphone before speaking and mute your audio microphone when you are not speaking. Also, please make sure to mute yourself. Thank you. Board members, since we are conducting this meeting via video conference and telephone, if you should lose visual or audio contact at any time, please contact Drew at 402-471-0533. If you are on video conference and lose contact but can still type using the chat function, let us know by chat. If you are able to hear but unable to be heard at the time of a vote, you can communicate your vote by chat, and that will be noted and recorded. Agenda item 2, the Commissioner's report. Commissioner Bloomstead?
Yeah, thanks, Maureen. Obviously a very unique situation that we're in right now. And I'm getting echo back. Sorry about that. Maybe everybody go ahead and mute their microphone when others are talking. That might be best.
Yeah. Hey, Commissioner, this is Ryan. Maybe I missed it, but did we call the roll?
Oh, fair point. I don't believe we did.
Sorry. Thank you. Andrea, please call the roll.
Deborah Neary.
Here.
Patsy Kojons.
Here.
Lisa Fricke.
Here.
Maureen Nichols.
Here.
Rachel Wise.
Present.
Robin Stevens.
Here.
Patricia Tim.
Here.
John Witzel.
Here.
Commissioner Bloomstead.
Present.
All present.
Thank you, Andrea. Okay, agenda item 2, the Commissioner's report.
Yeah, so yeah, maybe just everyone go ahead and mute when you're not talking. I can already tell that might be an issue just for some reason. So first of all, thanks for number one, all your flexibility in the current moment in time as we try to deal with probably a crisis that's well, certainly a century in the making. I suppose it's been certainly an interesting time. This is probably the first time the state board's ever met by video conference as such, or even permitted to necessarily under the law. So welcome to history. You're making it today. The reality is, I think it's also very important that we're able to meet in this fashion. I actually believe we'll be able to meet month by month just in this fashion as long as necessary. I think that's actually a really good thing in the modern era of technology. As folks know, we're able to live stream this, so our public is able to participate by viewing the meeting, really in the same place they view our normal meetings as far as streaming. Obviously, we are not all physically together, so appreciate the governor's emergency orders to allow board meetings like this to take place for various bodies across the state. I believe, already have school boards across the state using this or using some feature to kind of continue their business. And a lot of our work today will, number one, demonstrate that we are able to continue our major functions and our major business, but also allows us to have a conversation about what other things we might need to do at this moment in time. There are a lot of questions and issues that we could probably take up today, and we'll kind of do that kind of in the order of things, but I want to highlight maybe just a few areas. First of all, I got to highlight the amazing work of our staff over the last month. I will tell you, I believe that Nebraska's first COVID-19 positive case was the day of our board meeting. It was on a Friday 4 weeks ago, and the world has dramatically shifted and changed. By the 13th of March, so 1 week after that, I had already been in 2 different press conferences, one with the mayor of Lincoln and a second with the governor, including a lot of education leaders. I believe by the 16th, the following Monday in March, we were with our staff starting to have conversations about how we move to a more virtual work at home environment. One of the things that I'm very proud of our staff for is, number one, being thoughtful about the safety of one another in this moment in time, being thoughtful about how we can accomplish our work and continue to lead. Also, just the nature of that work was I was able to say what I thought we needed to do, and people went and made it happen, right? And I think that's a reflection of very solid staff and a very thoughtful staff who made things happen to put us in a position where we believed our functions could be met safely. And so even in this case with our board meeting today, it's a lot of folks in the background, as you know, doing a lot of work, and so just appreciate everyone's attention to what we've done. Certainly in the field more broadly, we've provided a lot of guidance and leadership or direction as best we could in the environment as it continues to exist. I've been very pleased to see us function in a lot of ways that maybe we didn't even know we had it in us. I'll use Maureen sent me a very nice text one day and said, "Matt, you're an excellent leader in this very challenging time." I said, "I'd prefer to be a mediocre leader in easier times." That's what I would tell you right now. But the reality is we're really all very much in this work together. I don't know that we would have been ready for this 2 years ago. So I want to credit the board for their thoughtfulness around our strategic plan, our values, our core principles of the agency are actually helping us get through this moment. And so just thanks for everything that you've done on those particular fronts. And so I don't have a lot of other things. I know there is a report on rules, and in my I'm going to struggle with a little technology myself as I have 2 different, oh man, Ryan can pull it up. That's excellent. So on the report in rules, you can see that we have Rule 11 that was approved by the governor on March 23rd. That allows us to do particular flexibilities, I would say, waiver even underneath Rule 11 for some of the issues that we faced in our pre-K programs. And so that is effective now. We probably will have more conversations about that as that continues to go forward. But also Rule 24, still awaiting approval at the AG's office. Actually, Rules 21 and 24, I believe we sent over from the last meeting. And so they're still waiting approval from the AG before they go to the governor. So that work continues. Our work on rules and regs continue in kind of regular order. But as you might imagine, our attention is drawn in kind of in the moment of the crisis on multiple other fronts. And so I look forward to chatting a little bit more about that with you today. There's been a lot of work at a national level I wanted to share too, and it impacts us in a lot of different ways. Credit to Steve Milliken and Amy Rohn and Lindy Foley for efforts to think about how we serve our disability populations right in this moment in time, and how we provide leadership from Nebraska. I have been fortunate to be in multiple national conversations, some of them led by Steve, because he is the current president of the National Association of State Directors of Special Education currently. And obviously, and you know this, Amy Rohn has actually taken the position of the Director of Special Ed for the department. She picked a great time to begin that work. I would say plenty of opportunities to help lead, and we'll have a chance a little bit later to talk through some of that additional work. But thanks to Steve and Amy and Lindy. This week we had a meeting with some of our disability advocacy groups and leaders. I felt really the need to engage with them, and again, strategies because of our strategic plan have put us in a position to really be thoughtful about how we engage with the communities most impacted in a moment in time. So we are learning new tricks constantly, but I think there are new tricks that are embedded in the goals of the agency and embedded in our mission, and embedded, I think, in the philosophies that you've helped shape and craft as board members. So thank you for that. We've also maintained, as you remember, probably in March, we started down the process of providing leadership around YRTCs administratively. And again, if you remember, the day you approved that was the day that the first COVID-19 case, we are, in fact, it hit the news last night. There is a case connected to the YRTCs, a positive COVID-19 case connected to the YRTCs. We're obviously working feverishly to make sure that we're providing the appropriate leadership in those spaces as well as across other DHHS educational institutions too. So there's plenty of that work going. Thanks to Dr. Friesen for her efforts on leading that. She and I spend many more hours on the phone sometimes, and again, distant socializing is what I'm saying, but the work is really critical, and we continue to provide leadership in that arena. I got to thank Brian Halstead. Brian has made, first of all, for us to move an agency the way we've moved an agency means that lots of people are having to do a lot of different type of work than they did before. Number one, just our policies and our regulations around what work from home looks like, how we pay attention to that, how we address our human resources needs, how we address our communications needs. And so it's been critical to do that. Ryan Four, as you already know, is doing a lot of our efforts to provide leadership in that space as well. I've asked him to take on some kind of leadership role as we function and make sure our functions underneath the agency are working effectively. So thanks to Ryan for those efforts. Thanks to Dean Folkers for his efforts on technology and underlying infrastructure. Thanks to Corey Epler for his leadership as we work on the continuity of learning. Thanks to Zainab Rita, who is helping lead from an equity lens and an equity perspective, what our response is for schools. Again, I'm very proud of all of those. And Scott in space is what I just saw. So Scott, you might need to mute. So anyway, so thanks to Scott for going to the moon and back for us, it looks like, so on a lot of different fronts as well. So anyway, I mean, there's Shirley Vargas, who's actually doing work. We're having to rethink how we do our supports for schools at this moment in time. As you might expect and probably have seen, there are so many things that are happening. It's probably, I can't do it all good justice right now. Our website is one of our primary sources of where we share information. So certainly Katie Bieber and our communications team have done remarkable remarkable job of keeping all of that organized too. So, and truly just everyone at the agency has done a remarkable amount of work. So, I probably can say there are some areas that I think are always some concern. Number one, the continuity of learning plans that, again, I think we'll be able to discuss as we're kind of talking about how to provide some flexibility for schools in this moment in time. The continuity of learning plans that are the basic questions are, how are you going to provide education opportunities for your students in the current setting, and how are you going to specifically also provide educational opportunities for students with disabilities, for students with special needs. And so those are critical parts of our work, and I think we'll get a chance to discuss that a little bit more. And then just generally the unknowns that exist for us, and I'll appreciate kind of our dialogue around the resolution as we have questions and those fronts. There are things that we can, I'll use the word waive, but there are things that we can use within our powers as flexibilities going forward. There are also some things that we don't have the power to necessarily waive, both on the federal law and a state law perspective. But I am, constantly working with the federal kind of sides of these fronts and thinking about how we can do that. Oh yeah, just like a little thing, like we were able to get a waiver from assessment and accountability. We submitted a waiver, and 3.5 hours later we had acceptance of that waiver. So these are very unique times to see that happen in, and again, trying to make sure that we're thoughtful about not just surviving this moment, but what our recovery might look like as we continue to go forward. So there are other laws, and I think one that was raised earlier was around FERPA. FERPA, I think, is one that we can't waive, but there are some needs right now around how we share data with partners and how that can be done. And I would propose that we'll be providing further guidance to our schools and our partners as that continues to be a need in this arena. Again, just so many things that I can't thank our team enough, and I can't thank all of you enough for what you've done and what we've managed this last month. I feel like this last month has been a really long year. So that's our reality at this moment in time. But I'll kind of stop there. Am I missing anything I was supposed to cover, Ryan?
We'll just want to make sure that we cover the consent agenda requests, and there's been one request.
Yeah, so thanks for that reminder. So yeah, we've had one request to pull something off for a specific dialogue, which is really the normal process. And so we can certainly do that. And then I guess we'll proceed with the agenda. Ryan, unless there's anything else you needed from me at the moment.
Yeah, so Lisa Fricke has requested item 4.7.d, approve the update to the Nebraska teacher and principal performance standards. And so, Commissioner, my recommendation is to take that agenda item up after the consent agenda is approved and before the resolution is taken up.
All right, so that sounds like a good approach to me. And so, Maureen, that'd be my recommendation on how we proceed. Can you repeat that number again one time, Ryan?
Yes. Item 4.7.d, approve the update to the Nebraska teacher and principal performance standards.
So I think that's what I have, Maureen. I'll turn it back over to you, I think.
Okay, does anyone have any questions to the commissioner before we move on?
I do.
Rachel?
Maureen, this is Rachel. Yeah, I have a quick question. And thank you, Matt, so much for all that you're doing and for the overview that you provided. And I can't even imagine day to day everything that you're balancing on your plate. I have a couple of questions about, you mentioned the continuity of learning plans. What's kind of your plan for moving forward with those? I know some states, just from some NASB calls we've been on, they're type of plans are going to the state board for approval. One state has divided those by their areas so that if you represent a geographic area, you'll be reviewing those plans so you have a better idea of what's happening in your area. Since some of us may be getting calls or have had questions about the delivery of instruction in our areas, have you given thought about those next steps relative to the continuity of learning plans?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I think a big part of this was we looked at a lot of other states and what they were doing. I thought in some ways schools were being frozen, kind of not knowing what to do. And we came up with this process that will kind of include I'll call this the front end of the process. And then we go through this and we want to have kind of on the end of the year and how we actually do an end of the year review. So I'll try to describe that. So the front end of this process, these continuity of learning plans are actually due to us today from schools. And I have not had a chance myself to go through them in great detail, but I know Dr. Epler has started to see those come in. And in some places you can see the differences that folks might answer that with. Again, we didn't give them deep guidance on what that might look like. We didn't necessarily say that absolutely every detail needed to be included in this, certainly in this first, very much first approach. But we are going to learn something from that. We'll be actually reviewing all of those different plans. And in part, I wanted to be able to share best practices across schools to understand what they were doing. There's been a lot of dialogue, as you know, between and among schools. Some schools took a very different approach than others, right? Some took an approach that looked, in part, maybe due to the how they were already running their environments, right? Places that were one-to-one might have had an easier time moving to a digital arena, and those schools, or even within a single school setting, you might have had teachers that were doing some of that, and so certain classes might be able to be delivered more effectively that way. All the way down to places that really I'm going to say in a weekend's time. I know people say they had a week to put them together. That wasn't always the case. Schools were putting plans together and delivering content, right after they decided to suspend kind of their normal operations. And so we've seen packets being delivered from a kind of a hard copy process. So it'll be interesting to see how those are written out. We might have other questions for places, and not from an accountability, not the hard, heavy hammer, but really going, where were your challenges? What are the types of things we ought to be thinking about? I think the board could review, and I wouldn't even mind that the board, and I think later maybe Maureen will talk about the possibility of working in our kind of 2-committee structure and having a chance to walk through those in some cases, understand what you're hearing from schools and communities. And in a lot of ways, we're really in a recovery and support approach right now, thinking about what are the types of things that are missing. And I'll use YRTCs just as an example. They were not set up for a digital learning environment for a lot of different reasons. And I believe we need to use this moment to move them to a position where they could do that more effectively. So that's what I hope to do with that. I think having committee meetings will allow us to kind of dive into it a little bit more as a board. And again, I haven't necessarily looked at what the plans are looking like. I know of some strategies across the state that are being used. I find it fascinating that, so many phone calls that I might get are the types of things like, Matt, tell us what we need to do about graduation or graduation requirements or course credits, right? Or what do we do on course credits? What do we do on a lot of different levels? I think this is going to be an opportunity for us to continually look at our equity lens and understand that probably right now, this is the biggest threat to equity that we've seen in an education system in certainly any of our lifetimes. But at the same point in time, we're going to learn something and be able to establish what I keep calling kind of a safety net underneath the education system as we go forward, to understand that students with disabilities can't be served in the same way. What are our strategies that are going to come out of this in the future? Students that are in poverty that don't have access to digital resources are going to have challenges. We're going to have students with behavioral or with mental health needs. We already have students with that need trauma-informed practices. This is going to have an impact there. I just think for us, we'd be wasting the moment if we weren't thinking through all those things. So I appreciate, that's kind of how I anticipate handling it. And the last part, maybe at the end of the year, underneath Rule 10, the process, and even underneath the law, is basically what I'm going to enhance it a little bit compared to what we've had in the past. Before, we just had an affidavit. If they couldn't fulfill the requirements, right, they would say we did everything we could and we tried to meet those. What I really want to know in the end of a school year, or what's their reflections at the end of the year, so we can be thoughtful about our policy role. You know, what's that going to mean for our considerations underneath Rule 10 or Rule 11 or, you know, Rule 51 or whatever it may be. We need to learn from this moment. I don't think I'm sharing new news in the sense that I have concerns about what's going to happen in the summer and yet in the fall. And our disruptions are likely to go longer than just this spring. As we might end up in a situation where we're having to do social isolation in waves, as waves of this might hit. We need to be prepared for that. It would be remiss of us not to be preparing for that possibility going forward. So that's how I see it, Rachel, for the time being.
Thank you, Matt. And to follow up just a little bit on that, one of the things from one of the NASB calls that was brought forward was the need to really capture information that can help as the federal response continues to be determined. And I know one of the states is collecting information on internet and device access. So each school is asked to gather so that you can have really good statewide information about how many kids do not have internet access and or device access, so that we can really clearly advocate for those needs. And I think that that's probably the one piece some of us are hearing, are the difference in needs in access, and in particularly in rural areas. You know, some of our rural communities have access, but then if you don't live within the community, you may not have access that is of sufficient capabilities to do streaming and those kinds of things. So I didn't know if you're thinking about some data collection processes or have some underway that can help capture and tell the story of Nebraska, that helps us understand the inequities of access from both an internet and or device perspective.
Yeah, and we absolutely are. In fact, just over the last couple of days, I've been having meetings with the Office of the CIO for the state. Our digital learning, there's actually a pretty robust digital learning plan, you know, that we've been working on. And so Dean Folkers has been critical kind of on those fronts. We also, we learned a few things last year. You know, I thought the flooding was about the worst thing I could imagine from a disaster across the state of Nebraska. But maybe was a bit of a blessing in that we learned some things about what to do to gather some information. I would say actually on homelessness was another of those, and we're, you know, economically going to be watching our homeless numbers and partnering with a lot of different entities to kind of gather that information. So you're exactly right, Rachel. I mean, capturing this data as we can. Our data team, I know Matt Hastings has already been thinking about our school is going to be asked for certain things. Bryce Wilson's done a great job of already highlighting where schools ought to be tracking some of their financial expenditures based on the CARES Act that's been passed and the subsequent rounds we expect on those fronts. So you're spot on. That data is going to be helpful. The tricky part is on the federal side, when you try to anticipate all of the things that they might want, they always, you know, there's always going to be somebody who says, no, we actually wanted this instead of that. But I think in this case, us just being able to tell the story, even in Nebraska, is the most important thing. So we're going to err on the side of gathering information along the way.
Great. My one final question, and then I'll let others, is I got an email from one of our colleagues in another state that serves quite a few rural, and they were indicating they're starting to see food distribution issues in their schools for those schools that are providing, you know, breakfast and lunch programs, that delayed distribution is happening. Are we seeing any of that in Nebraska?
Yeah, we have some areas of some challenges. And part of the challenge is that the food stocks that exist within USDA guidelines right now are certain things that are, largely have to be in a prepared environment to be able to be presented to students. There's challenges, obviously, given the virus, about the safety of everyone that's involved and how they pick up food and how they otherwise might distribute it. So there's those types of challenges. I think one of the things I would be proposing that we're advocating for, and I've already had some conversations at the national level and even just last night with the governor around, we're going to have to push on USDA to change some of their regulation. I truly believe that we ought to be moving more towards programs that are about food, family feeding as well. So the type of food stocks might look more like what our traditional backpack programs have, that we've had these great partnerships across the state and across the localities that prepare food, or that present food to families in a different way than our prepared foods might look like in a school setting. We are concerned that there's actually schools are preparing food, and we have food waste going on. And I'm not saying in great numbers, but we've had examples where there aren't people there picking up their food. And so that's becoming a bit of a concern and a challenge. And because it doesn't have shelf life the way that, we're really going to have to be moving towards the types of foods that are ordered in schools that are more easily distributed, in my view. But right now there are some probably policy barriers from USDA on that front. So our team, I think, has done a great job. I actually, that team is underneath Dr. Friesen. I don't know if you wanted to point out anything I might have missed, but Sharon Davis and her team have, I think, done a remarkable job of getting every waiver, talking through it. There are some challenges for our schools for a lot of different reasons, from just what facilities they have, plus what restrictions there are around certain sites to be able to be a food distribution site, for instance. And some of those are practical, but most of them are regulatory. So Dr. Friesen, do you have anything you wanted to add on that front?
I don't, Commissioner. I appreciate your comments, and that certainly feeding our children has been our #1 focus there. So we appreciate your comments toward that.
Thank you.
Deb Neary, you indicated you wanted to ask something.
If I could, thanks. I too was on that NASB national call, and so it just started a lot of thinking, and I just wanted to comment on the food distribution piece. I've been a part of several food distribution activities here with Omaha Public Schools, and where they've been focusing on the most vulnerable families. And I mean, it is extraordinary times. And I hope that it creates more awareness around what schools do in addition to teaching. We all know it, but I don't know if everyone does. And, the fact that there's so many concerns. And but on the question around the continuity of learning plans, are those going to be made public? I know you want to share the best practices, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to fall underneath public records anyway. So, I mean, I'm not exactly sure how our plans will work on that particular front, but I think a lot of it will be probably posted somehow within our website. And we're going to also try to use it from a kind of a data analysis standpoint. One thing I'll share, I mean, given where we're at right now, we've suspended the evidence-based analysis, but we have tool sets that come in and be able to put us in a position where we can gather information quickly from schools. And I think those tool sets are going to be extremely valuable. So like if we look at across of it and say, hey, look, we're kind of missing this information. Could schools tell us, what happened with X, Y, or Z? They've been just great to comply with this. And our point is just trying to move really, again, I'm going to say kind of the recovery effort forward. I think I started talking with our staff team about recovery in the first week of this, instead of waiting, instead of waiting towards the end and going, now what do we do? I think we have a lot of pretty solid thinking around that. Not that they're all plans at this point, but solid thinking about how to begin to use that information.
And is there some sense of what a minimum standard is? And if we feel like a school district isn't meeting a minimum standard, are there resources or supports that we're able to put in place? I mean, I know it, yeah, these are.
Yeah, I mean, I think for this current school year, I mean, I think those types of things might be a bit of a challenge, and we can't pretend to understand all the circumstances across the state effectively right now. But what I am, instead of thinking about it from a minimum standard from an accountability perspective, I think schools know what they wanted to be delivering and know what they couldn't, right? And so for us to understand that gap, the opportunity to learn that's being lost right now for certain students, is problematic. If we ran into a school, let me just say, if they threw their hands up in the air and said, there's nothing we're going to do for our students, that would be obviously that's on the extreme. And we, I'm going to be honest, we probably had those type of challenging conversations as it related to FAPE. So free appropriate public education, the guarantee underneath IDEA for special ed populations. And so there's been challenges. So I'm not gonna, it's not all rosy, right? Not at all, but I do think what we're seeing is people's understanding as we give them flexibility, they're willing to do even more. As I see that from the best practices with schools, if we function under fear, for instance, I see that people do things that aren't as good. If we function under the care of our students and our families, I'm seeing that people are going above and beyond to do that. And so I have the unique circumstance, maybe it's not all that unique now, let me put it that way, but the unique circumstance of being a father and watching what's happening with my own kids in these environments. It's a big challenge, but I'm watching remarkable teachers taking extraordinary efforts to communicate with all of their students. My youngest son, who's a fourth grader, right? They've done paper packets in his setting, but the teacher is Zooming or connecting through some type of video chat with all of it. You know what that means for the students? Those are extraordinary things, and those are great practices. Not every place is equipped to be able to do that, and that's one of my concerns. And not every family is equipped to be able to participate. That's my concern at this moment in time. So I'm probably more worried about not that schools aren't trying to do everything that they can, just that they have their own barriers, and how do we help them overcome those? So that's where I'm at right now.
And I agree, and thank you for that. And I guess along that line, because I guess it's because I've had 8 foster kids, I think about those kids at home that, really need school. And the mental health counselors and social workers that want to reach them, and how, I guess, even though it's decided by the school district how they interpret FERPA, I mean, I wonder if there's a way we could gather some information across all the school districts so we can better understand how districts are interpreting it. And are they using verbal consent in order to get releases of information instead of the written consents? So that if a school district, so school districts understand if there's some flexibility around that to make it easier to reach the kids that really need it. And maybe that's an offline discussion, but just something.
No, but I think it's a fair point just to bring up that as we are worried about, first of all, there's quite a bit of potential scamming going on too. So we have the other side of the equation to worry about data in different ways. I have had more emails from every company that has every solution that I ever needed to solve this crisis right now. The reality is I think we have to be extremely cautious. But from a policy perspective, and something that I've promoted around our system to involve youth, and we really had just started some of these conversations as we're starting to work with, not just with YRTCs, but really thinking about all students that are systems involved and state wards. I believe that there ought to be a state responsibility for those students and that data, and for special education and other funding. I had started many of those conversations with legislators. I believe This moment just proves that we better take that on. We met with our rural 18 schools earlier. The fact that we're struggling to have exchanges of information in this moment in time is unacceptable to me. So that's not to blame anyone. That's to blame, maybe let's blame me, right? But let's figure out what to do to resolve that in this moment. Let's figure out how we can use resources under the current environment that might be help us to address those things. And I think that's how we're going to try to provide leadership on all those fronts.
Thanks. Thank you.
Right.
My hand is up.
Excuse me.
Madam President, my hand is up.
Okay, Robin, go.
Going back to continuity plans, I really don't know what I want them to be, but I know two things that I don't want them to be. One, no superintendent should think that the reason that I'm filling this out is to meet some federal guideline that the state then has to do something to cover. That if that is the perception, these continuities of learning plans will not be very successful. The second thing that I'm very concerned about is that with these continuity of learning plans, that we at you at the department, because you have these learning plans coming in and therefore you feel as if you need to spend quite a bit of time on it, that if that takes away from much more important things that we are experiencing right now, then I know that that is not what I want from the continuity of learning plans. These better be useful. They better be things that our superintendents are thinking this is worthwhile, and that the department is not wasting time or taking, let me rephrase that, taking time away from the more important duties that we are having right now.
So Robin, what I would address on that is we signaled actually that they should be able to fill this form out in 30 minutes or less. I don't think that's too much of an ask. I also don't think it's too much of an ask to ensure that we're actually trying to protect schools from being in an environment where they weren't providing some level of continuity that would actually elicit the possibility of lawsuits, especially as it related to special education. And so our guidance, I think, has been appreciated by superintendents, and we work with school attorneys and others. I would suggest that probably our approach to this is probably the most locally friendly approach that you're going to find across the country. And if we hear otherwise from our, we'll adjust, but I don't believe that will be a challenge. There's always the perception, and Robin, you probably know it as well as anyone, it's really easy for me to blame the federal government or a superintendent to blame me for something. But the reality is our number one concern that we've messaged all along is be worried about continuity of learning for not just for hitting educational standards or expectations, but for the well-being of our students. And so that's what I want to promise to you. That's what this is about. And I'm pretty sure that as we keep going, it won't be that we don't have some place that's upset. I've had superintendents upset with some of my messages because they said, we don't need your opinion on X, Y, or Z. The reality is it's going to be those types of challenges, but I think for the most part, I'm very pleased with the response we've had from schools. I have a lot of places just mad that we're in this situation. I'm like, well, me too. I'm mad about that as well. So.
Is there anyone else?
If I can just follow up real quick, I appreciate, Robin, your question. And I guess whether it's part of the continuity plan or the data gathering piece or whatever, I think what for me is important to know from our schools and to have them feel comfortable in letting us know what their limitations and challenges are. I think that no one would have envisioned where we are today. And I think our schools need to feel really comfortable in a process in which they can articulate the barriers and roadblocks that they're encountering. And it shouldn't be done in a way that appears to be punitive or, a part of an accountability. I think it's critical for us in our roles as state board members to be able to articulate the needs of our students and schools across the state in a very different context than we would have imagined, a month ago. And so I think gathering that kind of information to me is almost more important than exactly what the schools are doing. I would be much more interested in knowing what are their limitations and how can we help figure out how to create a system that supports the limitations that school districts are encountering in this process.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Robin, go.
Okay. Are you, Rachel, or whoever, are you talking about the continuity of learning plan? That this data that you're asking for should be included in the continuity of learning plan? Because if you are, this plan has become much more than a 30-minute exercise. So I don't want to, for some reason, I'm hearing maybe too many conversations that I thought we were talking about the continuity of learning plan. And now we've jumped into something, in my opinion, that is not part of the continuity of learning plan, but we're using the continuity of learning plan as the thing that leads us to this discussion. And I just don't want that to happen. And I don't think we're talking about two of the same things. And one more thing. While I sound quite negative about this because I'm very concerned about taking time away from the most important thing that our superintendents and our administrators need to worry about, and that of course is our kids. And I'm very concerned about the department and their focus and where it has to be. But I want you to know that every superintendent that I have talked to, and it's been quite a few, every ESU administrator have as one very definite focus, and that is to do the things that are best. And so when I say these things, Commissioner, I'm sorry to hear that people are mad at you, but anybody, because you've done a marvelous job. But the issue, as I see it, is that you have the support of a major number of our superintendents, our school districts, our ESUs. And I'm making it sound as if, oh boy, they're out there really complaining. No, they're not. I'm just worried about this continuity of learning plan expanding into things that are going to take longer than 30 minutes.
If I can respond back to that, Robin, no, I don't care where it is. I just think it's important that we have an understanding. So some of the things that I'm hearing, and I'm sure some of you as well, one district may be doing a lot online and using Zoom and doing a lot of things with technology. And another district may be doing paper pencil packets and getting them out once a week. I think we have to honor whatever the district can do at the time and accept that that's what they can do at the time and not be judgmental on which direction they go and why. But I think we have to understand, is the district that's not using technology as much, not using technology because of the limitations of their students, the limitations of their students to have access and their families to have access. I think we have to figure out how do we at some point gather information that helps us advocate for our schools in different ways. I think that's a piece that not necessarily in the plan. And that's why I think we have to be cautious in these plans I love that they're short, quick, whatever. But I think we have to be cautious to think about the circumstances in districts that may create very, very different continuity of learning plans. And that's the piece that I think is important in our process going forward, not to add more work and not to add more complexity, but to figure out in some way to tell the stories that help to paint the picture of disparity that I think we have in this state. And I think that's what my point has been, Robin. So I concur with you that we don't need to, add more work on the continuity of plans, but I think we do have a process at some point where we need to collect some more tangible data and information.
And can I just add on to that, Robin? My questions were really about equity issues, and exactly what I heard Rachel just say is I hope that there's a way we can find supports for those schools that, have, several hundred languages being spoken in their student population, their high free and reduced lunch. I mean, their families don't have the technology access. It's like that's what it's about equity, really, so that we don't come out of this with a big gap in the opportunities.
This is Patsy. I have a hand up.
Go ahead, Patsy.
Well, first of all, I'm enjoying listening to this because it just shows what a great state board we have. Some really deep thinking and people who really care about kids. I love what you're saying, Rachel, about collecting information. We might be able to go about it in a very simple way, Robin, that doesn't take a lot of time, from a superintendent or a principal or even a teacher or another administrator in the school. And that might be by simply asking in our data collection, what were your greatest failures? What were your greatest obstacles? And then I think we always forget, what were your greatest successes, and have them discuss it on paper or however we choose to do that, at whatever link they choose. But I bet you'd learn more about a school from their greatest successes than we would their greatest failures. And I think that could provide us a lot of information too for the future, because almost for sure we're going to be facing some other things like this in the future.
Matt?
I just want to just say, first of all, thanks for the dialogue on this. I mean, the reality is we're going to have a long time to unwind some of those things. And Robin, I think, and I don't mean to be at all negative, because actually almost all superintendents, almost all people I talk to, and even the ones that might be a little upset, I call them, I have a dialogue with them. We've probably never been more visible or communicative from an agency standpoint. It proves some things to me. The other lessons are how we can really lead and be part of this whole system. And so even through these negatives, that we might face and what we have to deal with, the reality is we're just finding caring people everywhere, trying to get the right things done. And so that I'm emboldened by all of that to continue to do this work, and realistically, it's going to change the face of how we do things in the state. And I just want to make sure that we do it in our as thoughtful as possible way that we can accomplish that. And so really, I'm just very proud of what we've done.
Is there anyone else? I can't see everybody at one time
Madam
because
Chair.
box on, so I can't see if there's hands raised. So Robin, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm not making myself probably as clear as, or I didn't make myself as clear as I should have. My major concern was the continuity of learning plan. I am not trying to say what Rachel, Deb, or anyone else is saying isn't a concern. my issue was pure and simple, the continuity of learning plan. And I do appreciate all the other comments and basically agree with them. I just didn't want to get the two things mixed. At least in my mind, I was getting confused.
Yeah.
Not a real far trip either.
Actually, so just because a little birdie just told me that we have most of the continuity learning plans are already in, right? So, and we actually have those from our non-publics too, by the way, because we wanted them to be able to do the same. Ryan, you wanted to share something on screen with folks just so they could kind of see that? Is that what you were suggesting, or?
I'm suggesting we can show people on the website. Again, it's been messaged through your emails, but if people want to go and take a look at what we're asking from schools, and so just give me a moment, and I'll share my screen and navigate us there.
And so I think to Robin's point anyway, it's not really about the continuity of learning plans. I mean, the reality is schools are filling those out and we'll have all of them in very soon. So that's a low burden. I think the burden is, trying to understand the rest of the circumstances that we might have going forward. So I think we have, I mean, it's actually quite straightforward as far as what they have to submit. And by the way, they submitted a lot more than they had to in some cases where they've given us a lot more information. So I think we're well on our way to begin to understand where schools are at and be able to help them respond to the circumstances they have. So that's the main point at this point.
Any further discussion? Seeing none.
Maureen, you muted yourself.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, we'll move on to the president's report. Just a few things. I want to ask each of you to check your email, your government email, regularly, daily, for updates from the commissioner or from Ryan or from NASB. Those updates or information are going to be very important that we keep on top of. As I indicated in my newsletter to each of you earlier this week or last week, I can't remember the dates. Next week, we're going to be convening our super committees to delve into more of where our various committees can be of greater thinking in what's coming down the pipe. So please make sure you check your emails on those for that especially. Like all of you, I've had a lot of time to do a lot of thinking in my social distancing, which is pretty much 365 days of the year. But we are living in a new normal. And I've tried to do some mindfulness work for my own self-centering during this time, because it is a tough time for all of us. And I hope that our educators and our administrators will be thinking about taking a deep breath and stepping back. Yesterday, when I was thinking about, maybe a comment to make, the first thing that came to my mind was the monarch butterfly, which is very, very, it's a big reflection piece to me and meaningful in so many ways. But basically, a monarch butterfly and butterflies in general are all about transformation. And we're in this transformation period right now, just like the butterfly emerging from the cocoon. And we have to remember that the wings of transformation are born of patience and struggle. And the department, our educators, our teachers, our administrators, our parents, they're having to deal with patience. And they're struggling, many of them, and especially our students who don't have a lot of support systems. So I want us to keep that in mind and take a deep breath when we think about these things. And also, I don't want us to be discouraged by how far we must go. A butterfly has a long ways to go in its migration. And I'm sure that that monarch gets discouraged along the way. But instead, I know that that butterfly thinks about the opportunity to soar. And I hope that all of our school districts, and I hope that each of us will take a moment in time and some deep breaths, as especially the department, as they're working in trying to find opportunities to soar in this tumultuous time, as I refer to it. And I hope our educators and administrators will take this great time to have some great opportunities and take some risk and to flutter their wings and soar to great heights in a time that we never thought we would ever be living in. And we just have a new normal. But I just want each of you to know how proud of each of you I am as my colleagues in your commitment and dedication to this work that's ahead of us in this tumultuous time. And again, as I've let the commissioner know, I am very proud of him and his leadership, but it's not just him, it's been the entire staff at the Department of Education who are working around the clock to assist our educators and our administrators in next steps and these continuity plans. So thank you to all of you. As your president, I'm very pleased to be representing you. And with that, we will move to item 4 on the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with item 4.7.d removed? Do I have a motion from someone?
I so move. Rachel.
I second. Pat.
Pat second. Thank you. Per board policy, there is no discussion on the motion to approve the consent agenda. And with that being said, Andrea, would you call the roll?
Deborah Neary,
Approve.
Patsy Kojohns,
Yes.
Lisa Fricky,
Yes.
Maureen Nichols,
Yes.
Rachel Wise,
Yes.
Robin Stevens,
Yes.
Patricia Tim,
Yes.
John Wetzel.
Yes.
8 yes.
Motion passes. We will now move on to item 4.7.d. Lisa, you're the one who pulled that item. Would you like to share information for us as to why you pulled it and what you would like to discuss?
Okay. Kim and her team did a fantastic job on this. And the first part of this document is about the teacher portion, which includes something about aligning with standards. But in the principal portion, I didn't see standards. So I'm looking at page 6 and the staff and support. Whoops, Brian, can you, I was looking at my document. Can you put that down for just a minute so I can see my document? There you go. Whoops, it disappeared, darn it. Well, anyway, I can't see my document now, but in that portion, I'm trying to remember because I lost my document, but it says something about align with the school's vision, mission, and something. And it's just a suggestion to add to align with the state standards, the school's vision, mission, and something. I just feel that in the principal portion, even though the teachers create the curriculum that has to be aligned with the standards, I believe that the principals portion has to have something about standards. So it's a matter to me of an edit to ensure that the principal portion has the word standards in it.
Okay. I'm going to seek Scott Summers here. Scott, are you there?
I am.
Okay. Do we need to have Lisa put a motion in place with what she wants before we have further discussion?
I'll also ask Ryan as a certificated parliamentarian. I think what Lisa's proposing is to amend an agenda item. I think you might need a motion, and I'll let Ryan chime in too, but I think you need a motion for her to amend, to propose an amendment to the motion. In other words, a motion to approve item, what is it, 4 point whatever D, and then she could chime in to amend it, unless we just have a motion to approve with the proposed amendment. But I'll let Ryan speak to that as well.
Yeah, the simplest approach might be for a main motion, and in the main motion to include an addition of standards when referring to administrators, or whatever the intent is of Lisa or the proposer of the motion. So it might sound something like, I move to approve the teacher principal performance standards with the addition of reference to content standards where administrators are mentioned, or something like that. Scott, does that?
Yeah, I would think the motion would be to approve item 4 point, and again, I'm lost my number here. Is it D, 4.7.D, with the addition of state standards appearing before the word schools visions on page 6 at staff support and development. I think that captures what Lisa's saying, but I'll leave that to Lisa. I think that would be the motion.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, I just wanted to say that it's under staff development, and one of the things that the staff, I believe, throughout the state needs is development on curriculum, and the curriculum has to be aligned to the standards. Therefore, I think it needs to be mentioned in this portion to state align with state standards, comma, schools vision, mission, and whatever. I can't see the document, but I believe it goes something like that.
Okay.
And this is Scott. I suppose we put state content standards to be clear.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. So Lisa, do you want to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion that on page 6 of the principal document, under the standard of staff development, that the word state content standards be added prior to schools, mission, vision, or whatever that wording is, to amend that.
Is there a second?
Uh-oh.
I'll second.
Thanks,
Okay.
Pat.
Moved by Lisa, seconded by Pat.
Maureen, before you continue, I would ask that Lisa, the proposer of the motion, or somebody from the board include in that approval of the document in the wording of the motion.
I agree. I mean, if someone would do that.
Which you can do, Lisa.
Okay, to approve the teacher principal standards with the amended portion, or however you say that. Thank you, Ryan.
So do I need a second on that, Ryan?
He shook his head no, so.
No, I'm sorry. So it was just offering before the motion went to discussion, you can make a change to it. And then now
we can discuss.
Yep.
Okay. Further discussion by board members. Pat,
I think having the continuity throughout the document, and Lisa bringing that up was a very good idea. We need to have, things aligned, and certainly as an educational leader, the administrator, the principal, the superintendent, or whoever, needs to show that they're supporting what's happening with their teaching staff. So that was a good call, Lisa.
anyone else? Yep.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding. I mean, from the staff perspective, does this change much other than help align things? Is there any other unintended impact?
I don't believe so. I mean, I think it's just a consistency thing, and I'll look at Dr. Friesen if she had a different view of that, but I don't think it would. It's more of a non-substantive change. I think just clarity. So
I agree, Commissioner. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Okay, seeing no further discussion, we will move to approve 4.7.d in its amended form. I'm going to stop here for a second. Ryan, is that all I need to state?
Yep. And so then you'll call the roll. And then after you call the roll, if I could just make a comment about the document.
Thank you. Okay, Andrea, please call the roll.
Nichols,
Yes.
Kojons,
Patsy, can you still hear?
Yes, I'm still here.
Andrea, call Patsy again.
I'm going to suggest everybody mute their microphone. Andrea, we couldn't hear you, so you might have to mute and unmute.
can everybody hear me now? Okay, I'll restart the roll then. Kojons,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Wise,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Witzel,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
8 yes.
Motion passes. Thank you, Andrea. Ryan, what is it that you would like to add?
I'll offer that we'll propose the revised document to the board and to the public with the revisions, and we'll make that available on the state board's website. And so if folks are wanting to see what those revisions are, and then we would also present that back before the state board at the May meeting to ensure that what the intended action was carried out.
Thank you, Ryan. Agenda item number 5, the resolution on the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on Nebraska schools. Whereas the world is experiencing a pandemic of the coronavirus disease 2019, COVID-19, affecting at least 181 countries and regions with over 1 million confirmed cases and over 53,000 deaths resulting from this novel virus, the United States has the highest number of confirmed cases of any country, with over 245,000 confirmed cases and nearly 6,000 deaths. In Nebraska, there are over 250 confirmed cases and at least 6 deaths. Whereas Commissioner Bloomstead is providing statewide leadership and coordination efforts with the governor, chief medical officer, and leaders for interim program schools, non-public schools, public schools, and schools operating under special purpose agreements. Educators, administrators, school boards, clients, and citizens, including the recommendations and directives for schools to operate without students in their buildings. Whereas the mission of the Nebraska Department of Education is to lead and support the preparation of all Nebraskans for learning, earning, and living, and through the equity issues faced in this pandemic, the Commissioner is requiring schools to provide a continuity of learning plan for all students, while coordinating with state and national leaders to ensure a free, appropriate public education for those students receiving services under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. Whereas the Commissioner worked expediently and voluntarily to allow for the staff of the Nebraska Department of Education to work remotely or to modify work schedules so as to reduce staff members' risk of exposure to COVID-19. And whereas the Commissioner serves as the executive officer of the State Board of Education, now therefore be it resolved that the State Board of Education affirms the actions of the Commissioner to protect the public health of the people of Nebraska, maintain the continuity of education of students, maintain the continuity of services of the Nebraska Department of Education, and support the well-being of the staff of the Nebraska Department of Education. Resolved that the State Board of Education further directs the Commissioner, under the authority of the rules and regulations administered by this board, to facilitate broad flexibility for the operation of schools while asking schools to be cognizant of their students, families, and staff most in need of equitable supports. To support the use of continuity of learning plans as the approach to granting authority for schools to manage the needs of their schools and local communities. And to continue working with the governor and other state and national leaders to provide broad flexibility under the governor's emergency powers in the administration of statutes pertaining to the operation of schools during and as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Resolved that the State Board of Education encourages creative solutions to the complex problems faced by our state, communities, schools, educators, administrators, school boards, clients, and citizens. Resolved that the State Board of Education grants the Commissioner the authority to submit emergency waivers to the federal government and apply for federal grants whenever Nebraska is eligible to mitigate the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on the people of Nebraska. Resolved that the State Board of Education grants the Commissioner the authority to manage the office environments of the Nebraska Department of Education in the safest manner while maintaining a continuity of operations for essential functions, including flexibility of staff leave and work environments. Further, the State Board of Education supports the Commissioner in the delegation of duties to agency leadership and staff within the Nebraska Department of Education consistent with the emergency needs. And resolved that the State Board of Education recognizes the intentional and purposeful work of the staff of the Nebraska Department of Education through the COVID-19 pandemic and recognizes the additional demands on their personal time and efforts and the unknown demands forthcoming. Do I have a motion on item 5?
Maureen, I'll make that motion. This is John Witzel. I'll make the motion on the resolution to approve the resolution on the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on Nebraska schools.
Second, Lisa.
Thank you. John moved and Lisa seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? To ensure that we have some discussion, I am just going to call on each board member to ensure that I didn't miss some hands. And I'm going to call on you in the order, the numerical order of your district. So I will start with Patsy. Do you have any discussion? If you don't, you can say pass.
Pass.
Thank you. Lisa, District 2.
Just want to show my appreciation for having whoever wrote that, and especially the portion about the staff. I can't even imagine with Commissioner Ryan, all those involved working with the staff. It's amazing what they do. That's it.
Thank you. Rachel, District 3.
I just want to echo appreciation and for providing any suggested input. Again, I really appreciate the work that you and Patsy and the Commissioner and Ryan have done, and anyone else involved in developing this resolution. It's really outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. John, District 4.
Thank you, Maureen. Summing up this resolution, the bottom line is that we, the State Board of Education, is totally empowering the Commissioner of Education and backing his judgment in the most extreme of times in Nebraska's history. Regardless of the circumstances, we trust the Commissioner to lead NDE, take the lead, take command of the situation, and he has definitely accomplished this with such incredible results. Thank God, just in time. Thank God, just in time. In this resolution, let's not forget also the thousands of state and local school officials that work so very closely with the Commissioner and the NDE staff now on a minute-by-minute basis. The Commissioner has a proven record of outstanding and trusted working relationships with Governor Ricketts, state and various local officials, which gives this resolution true meaning and effectiveness. Without those close relationships, this resolution would have less meaning. Let us not forget the people we have the honor of representing here at the State Board, our own constituents. They are known to be very resilient, tough, hardworking, with the pioneer spirit that is evident in all Nebraskans, enabling the Commissioner with traits of that spirit that include the pioneer spirit of having the vision of something better is beyond our immediate challenging circumstances. The pioneer spirit that exercises independent judgments using his integrity to come up with new ideas, inventions, innovations, and enterprises. And lastly, the pioneer who is a risk taker who travels unknown paths and into perilous territory to reach our education goals.
Thank you, John.
As we today are affirming our trust and confidence in the Commissioner with this resolution, we are in essence speaking for our constituents, the people we are so proud to represent. As an implied in the resolution, the state has experienced and will continue to anticipate many tragic and unexpected detours in the far and near future for all associated in our education institutions. Let us to aspire that these current and insurmountable detours will lead to opportunities for a brighter future for all Nebraskans. We will be a state that others will have to emulate because Nebraska's inherent pioneer spirit. Commissioner, take the lead. And I'd like to point also, may our hometown and Heartland heroes combating the deadly COVID-19 disease be blessed for their unheralded self-sacrifice, tireless efforts in keeping all Nebraskans safe. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Pat, District 5.
Very well said, John. Thank you for speaking for us in that manner.
Thank you, Pat.
Robin, District 7.
Good stuff all around.
Thank you. Deb, District 8.
I don't think I can say it as well as our author, John Witzel, but I did want to say that, I've said long before COVID that I am so grateful to serve under and with side by side with the leadership of Dr. Blomstead. And I have so much respect for his concern about equity issues, his high integrity, his strong vision. And so nothing delights me more than to have his leadership at this time and to give him this kind of authority to continue to bring success to the children and students of Nebraska. So thank you for your leadership, Matt, and proud to vote for this.
And I would just like to add my deep appreciation for everyone who has stepped up to the plate on this issue. And I think, well, I don't think John did. He said it all, and I so appreciate the words that he put into place. And I'm just so proud to be part of this board during this time, because I believe that we will ensure that our students get a great education, and in that Matt will lead us in the right direction. So thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to add anything? If so, raise your hand so I can see it. Seeing none. Andrea, please call the roll.
Wise,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Witzel,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Kojons,
Drew, would you manually unmute her?
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
8 yes.
Motion passes. Thank you, Andrea. Agenda item 6, information items and reports. Thank you for submitting your monthly reports, and board members' reports are linked in Spark, and I encourage you to review those. 6.2 through 6.6, the next items are information items and written reports for the board and for our information only. Agenda item 7, that brings us to adjournment. Thank you for those who tuned in to this live internet broadcast, a first in history for the state board. A work session, if needed, will be held on Thursday, May 7th at a time to be determined. A business meeting will be held on Friday, May 8th at 9:00 a.m. The April State Board of Education meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for your leadership, everybody at NDE, and stay healthy.
You too, Deb.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, stay
Bye.
safe.
Bye, Rachel.